The new trailer for Five Nights at Freddy's 2 proved one of our old theories wrong, reopening the question, who is Mike's brother Garret? What role is he going to play? What ghost is he going to be in this series? Well, though the trailer might have proven one old theory incorrect, another one might actually be right. Hello internets, welcome to Film Theory, the show that is once again talking about Five Nights at Freddy's. Second week in a row. Like, what are we, game theory? Yeah, in case you missed it, the new trailer for the Five Nights at Freddy's 2 movie dropped a few weeks ago, and I'm consistently amazed at just how much the filmmakers, and Scott specifically, are able to pack into these 2-minute trailers and teasers. I don't know how long this video is going to end up being, but like last week's FNAF theory, just breaking down the big pieces of the trailer, was like just under 20 minutes, and this one will probably be pretty close-ish to that too, so it's just too dense. Anyway, in that breakdown last week, one of the big pieces we put together was that FNAF 2 is almost certainly going to feature a character named Charlie Emily, a little girl from the lore of the FNAF games who would go on to die and possess the puppet. The puppet is the big new scary animatronic in this movie, so it makes sense that Charlie's going to take that same role in the movieverse. But this creates a bit of a problem for us here at Theorists. See, Matt and I previously speculated that another character was going to be taking Charlie's place as the puppet. That theory is years old at this point. Go check it out if you want a refresher, but I felt pretty confident in it until this new trailer. It just made sense to me that they were going to try to condense the characters in the film series to try to make it simpler for a mainstream audience, but clearly that isn't the direction they're headed in for the series. What, a FNAF product being convoluted and confusing? No. And yet, Garret is a massive loose end, a dangling thread that Scott and the filmmakers set up that would be really disappointing if they never paid off. So they're certainly going to bring him back into the story somehow. And the real question is, how are they going to do that? What character from the FNAF lore is Garret going to pop up as? Well, loyal theorists, I think I figured it out. And this one's gonna leave you in tears. Get your fast talkers ready, loyal theorists. I want to get to the bottom of this one. So to figure out who Garret is going to be, I want to start with a bit of a recap as to why he can't be the puppet in this new movie, and also layer on some other evidence here that I wasn't able to fit in last week. Basically, why is Charlie definitely the puppet, but not Garret? Well, according to one of the new characters talking about the pizzeria in the trailer,
some little girl got murdered here.
A little girl I'm pretty sure we actually see screaming in the trailer. This is almost certainly pointing to a very specific character from FNAF lore, the aforementioned Charlie Emily, daughter of Afton's business partner, Henry Emily. Afton killed Charlie during his original murder spree, which appears to line up with what we see in the trailer. There's a shot of what looks like Springtrap looking at a little boy through a door's window in a cleaned up and brand new looking pizzeria. This is clearly a flashback. And Charlie being in this movie even lines up with the script pages Scott released during the FNAF 10-year anniversary. If you don't remember, Scott released 4 pages from the FNAF 2 movie script during the event, but the catch was that only one of them was real. After seeing the first teaser, the script page I think is the real one sees a man leading his children, Gemma and Darren, into a hidden room in the pizzeria. Honestly, the only thing going against this page was that it included a carousel with characters who might not even exist at this point. But, well, we see a carousel in the trailer, and though you can't make out which animals are on it, I wouldn't be surprised if there were cameos from those animatronic characters I originally wrote off. Anyway, this script page could now show Charlie and this little boy, the one that we see in the trailer, being led to their deaths as the cold open for the movie. Now, you may have also noticed that the names I mentioned on this page, Gemma and Darren, don't line up with the likes of Charlie or whatever, but that's actually a pretty common screenwriting trick. If a writer or studio want to keep the exact details of a role secret, like their identity, they'll often give the characters fake names during the scripting phase to hide those identities. For example, early in production and even in the auditions, the characters Rey and Finn from the Star Wars sequel trilogy were known as Kira and Sam or Rachel and Thomas. So Gemma and Darren could be placeholder names for real characters like Charlie if Scott didn't want us to know that's where the story was going, especially if he was going to tease the page. Though I will just say, just quickly as an aside, this trailer did make me wonder about these pages again. See, in my very first theory I did about the script pages, I concluded that this one was actually the real one. It talked about haunted plushies and how they related to a book called The Velveteen Rabbit. Go check out that theory if you want more info there. In the end, I decided I was mistaken and the other page we'd narrowed it down to is actually the correct one, but after seeing this trailer and noticing how prominent the plushies were in the restaurant, I did second guess myself, but no, I still think this other page is correct. Just wanted to point that out because, one, it's always fun to share our thought process with you you guys, and two, it's weird that there are so many plushies in this restaurant, right? I'm not crazy, right? So, okay, if Charlie is in this new movie, it only makes sense for her spirit to be one of the animatronics, the puppet. That's who she possessed in the games, and with both Charlie and the puppet being so front and center in this new movie, that's the only connection that makes logical sense. And, like I said earlier, that's a huge problem for us here at Theorist, because we were previously sure that Garret was going to be the puppet instead. I mean, we had a whole freaking theory about it. It made sense at the time, especially since we speculated that Mike's dad could be the movie's version of Henry Emily, so Garret would be taking Charlie's place. And we thought that the dad would be Henry Emily for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Afton recognized Mike's name, and that's why he actually got the job at the pizzeria in the first place. And two, we thought the actor playing a worker tinkering with an animatronic in the training video Mike watched looked kind of like the actor playing his father. Sadly, in retrospect, neither of those things are as hard evidence as we would have liked. That worker actually ended up being a cameo from an employee of the Jim Henson Creature Shop, the people who make the animatronics in real life, and Afton could have just recognized the name of one of his victims. It didn't need to be because he worked with Mike's dad. So, okay, if Garret isn't going to be the spirit controlling the puppet, is he just not going to be showing up again? That wouldn't make a ton of narrative sense. He's a huge part of Mike's backstory and a giant dangling thread. No, he's going to show up again. So, who is he going to be when he does? What ghost is Garret going to become? Well, there is one spirit that he could fit perfectly into, someone from the games that Garret could embody and create a satisfying narrative, helping to resolve Mike's arc, the Afton storyline, and finish out the trilogy in Five Nights at Freddy's 3. And who is that? Well, loyal theorists, Garret is going to be the FNAF movie universe's version of the Crying Child. Now, before we really get into this, we should probably level set real quick, because while I know a lot of us are really in the weeds with FNAF and its lore, if you're just here for the movies, or if you're a newer fan, you might hear something like The Crying Child and think, huh? So let me give you a bit of a rundown. The Crying Child was a character that appeared in the retro arcade-style minigames from the Five Nights at Freddy's 4 video game. These were like a little story within a story, giving us details on the backstory of the FNAF universe and its characters. These sorts of games were where we learned a lot of details about like the purple guy and his murders to begin with, and where most of the story of the Crying Child is told. So, who is the Crying Child? Well, we aren't actually sure what his name is, and that was a huge mystery in the fanbase for years. It's still never been confirmed, but the best explanation I've seen comes from Hyperdroid's theory on the subject, suggesting that it's David. But more importantly, regardless of his first name, we do know his last name, Afton. Yep, he was one of William Purple Guy Afton's children. He was also absolutely terrified of the animatronics his father built, which honestly, I mean, fair, look at these things. Anyway, the Crying Child's older brother Michael knew this, and he decided to play a prank on the Crying Child at the Crying Child's very own birthday party. Michael and a bunch of his friends took the Crying Child and put his head inside of the jaws of the Fredbear animatronic, and well, you can guess the rest.
Was that the bite of 87?
No, actually that was the bite of 83, which also, hey, it's funny and weird that there were two big events revolving around an animatronic biting someone, but you know, whatever, 2 nickels and all that. Now already, right here, we have some thematic connections to Garret from the first movie. Like, first off, the Crying Child's brother, Michael Afton, he felt incredibly guilty for the death and wanted to make amends for it, eventually becoming the playable character from the very first FNAF game. The alias he took for that job, Michael Schmidt. Yeah, Michael Afton is already the basis for Mike from the movies. Just to be clear, I am not saying that I think Mike from the movie is secretly an Afton, or that Garret is like secretly Afton's son that he then kidnapped and then killed. The FNAF franchise can be convoluted and confusing, but not that convoluted and confusing. But the thematic parallels are clear here. Both Michael and Mike feel guilty for the deaths of their brothers, the Crying Child and Garret. Both were killed because of Afton, though one more directly than the other, and that drove the Mikes to want to get some sort of redemption. So if Scott is using the same sort of long-term motivations for both characters, movie Mike is going to want to continue seeking that redemption for the loss of Garret. Not for literally getting his head crushed, but you know, it's thematically similar. And the best way he's going to be able to do that is if Garret becomes the Crying Child. Now, that's most of what we know for sure about the Crying Child, but that doesn't mean there isn't some strong beliefs about him in the community, thanks to all of the awesome FNAF theorists throughout throughout the years. And honestly, if Scott decided to go with even a percentage of these theories as the movie's canon, Garret's story in the FNAF films could be incredible. One of the longest running theories we've had here on the channels was that there wasn't just one spirit inside of Golden Freddy, but instead two. The first was a vengeful spirit, one that wanted revenge for everything done to them. But the other one was the crying child, who was less angry. There was a ton of evidence for this that we covered over years, involving like the numbers of eyes lighting up and Golden Freddy acting weird, and it's a lot. We'd be here for ages if I tried to recap all of it. Honestly, I just recommend going on a nostalgia trip and binging through some of those old game theories. Either way, the idea of two kids being inside of a ghostly animatronic like Golden Freddy is an idea that the franchise picked up elsewhere. It's not just a fan theory. For example, in the Fazbear Frights book series, we meet the Stitch Wraith, who has the souls of both a vengeful spirit and a crying child inside of it. To be clear, this isn't the same animatronic as Golden Freddy, and these aren't the same spirits. These are characters named Jake and Andrew, but they are all clearly supposed to be stand-ins for the game franchise version of Golden Freddy. Regardless, the filmmakers have laid the groundwork that they need to introduce a second spirit to Golden Freddy in the films. First off, the blonde kid who's possessed Golden Freddy in the movies very much fits the mold of a vengeful spirit. After Afton is defeated, he looks on as his body and soul are tortured by the Golden Bonnie Springlock suit, almost giddy at it. And he also wants to kill Abby and have her join the other animatronics. It's very vengeful spirit coded, so they have that aspect of Golden Freddy if they wanted to expand it with the crying child half. And a design detail that they carried into the movies was that Golden Freddy only has one functioning eye, similar to some imagery from the character that led us to believe that the crying child was in there to begin with. A really easy way for them to subtly hint that the movie Golden Freddy also has these two warring spirits inside of it would be to have the other eye socket either light up, or if the weird spirit apparition that is Golden Freddy's body randomly manifests with both eyes, each with its own color or something like that. You know, this is actually kind of funny because way back before the first FNAF movie came out and we did our prediction theory, the one that I wrote completely solo because Matt knew all of the secrets, well, I predicted that Garret would actually end up becoming Golden Freddy instead of the blonde kid from the movie, who would instead become the cupcake. Not my best prediction, I must admit, but hey, you can't win them all. Anyway, that kid ended up being that vengeful spirit inside of Golden Freddy, so there's a chance that at least part of this initial prediction could end up being true, with Garret becoming the crying child half of Golden Freddy. It's always weird how theories can end up coming around again, just with a slightly different point of view on it. So, okay, Garret will almost certainly be the crying child. So where does that leave us with the story of the FNAF movie series and where Garret will fit into it? Well, for FNAF 2, I don't really expect it to have any huge changes. This movie already has a lot going on with Charlie and the puppet and the toy animatronics and all of that jazz. Like, we might get a post-credit scene or another teaser in the credits, but it's not going to be something huge, you know? Nah, the real impact here is going to be on the third FNAF movie. Pretty consistently, we've predicted that the series is going to keep getting bigger and bigger with the threats that the characters face, with FNAF 3 likely bringing in a lot of story elements from Security Breach, introducing the Pizzaplex as the third big location for Mike, Abby, and Vanessa to explore, and the Glamrocks as the new animatronics in the story. But now I'm less certain about that. See, behind the scenes in recent months, Blumhouse, the production company behind the FNAF movies, started really struggling. Several of their other movies have been really big misfires, the most recent one being Megan 2.0. Like, it's boring movie business stuff, but that movie really bombed and impacted their bottom line. If the first movie is any indication, FNAF 2 is probably going to do pretty well for them. And in classic horror movie Hollywood fashion, Blumhouse is probably going to want to stretch this franchise out. And an easy way for them to do that right off the bat? Well, don't introduce more Security Breach stuff yet. That can be saved for future FNAF movies. Maybe FNAF 4, where they could do a soft reboot with a new main cast, letting them explore the Security Breach era of stories as its own trilogy. And if that's the case, then it makes the most sense to bring Garret and the Crying Child storyline back in to round out this trilogy of FNAF movies. So if that's the plan, how are they going to do that? So what's the story going to be? Well, while diving deep into the mini-games for FNAF 4 for this theory, a couple of quotes from the Crying Child really stuck out to me. Specifically, "We are still your friends," and "I will put you back together," both from Night 6. Do these lines sound familiar to you? Like something similar to what Mike's doing in the movies?
Some days she misses her friends.
This story that you're gonna fix those animatronics?
Obviously, the ghostly children in the movies and the games are both referred to as friends, but more importantly, Mike is trying to fix the animatronics. One could say that he's trying to put them back together so they can find peace peace and move on. And I bet I even know how he's going to do it. While we don't know a ton for sure about the crying child, something we do know for sure he was involved with in the games, the happiest day ending, or basically the good ending of the FNAF 3 video game. The long story short here, well, in the happiest day minigame, it's the crying child's birthday again. But instead of being bullied and accidentally killed by his brother, the crying child basically gathers all of the souls of Afton's other victims and celebrates his birthday. He has the party he never got to have in life, giving the souls some modicum of peace and letting them pass into the afterlife. Well, all of the spirits except for Charlie, for some reason, like it more or less actually says that exactly in the character encyclopedia. Like Charlie didn't move on because, I don't know, man, for some reason. Honestly, kind of hilarious. So, using that info, because he's trying to help fix the animatronics, to help Abby's friends, Mike is going to be the one to help put them back together. He's going to be the one to help them have their happiest day in FNAF 3, helping them celebrate whatever birthday they never got. He'll be the big brother to Garret he never had the chance to be. And in doing so, along with protecting these kids, and Abby, and Vanessa from Afton's evil spirit, Mike is going to help release them from the purgatory they're trapped in with these pizzerias. He's gonna help these spirits move on and find peace. Well, at least until they find the next group of haunted animatronics. These things are multiplying like rabbits in this franchise. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And cut. Up next on Film Theory, the Walton Files are back.